Good day, everyone. Today, our topic is more about problem-solving concepts and strategies. In this presentation, we will explain the basic concepts, the complexity, different methods, kinds, and strategies used in solving in mathematics. Together with my group mates, we aim to help you see how problem solving is not only about finding answer, but also about applying logical thinking and strategies in order to better understand mathematics. So why does problem solving matter in mathematics? It matters because it helps students deepen their understanding of math concepts. Through problem solving, students investigate patterns, test, and justify their ideas, and make generalization. It also allows them to connect what they learn in the classroom to real-life situations. That is why solving is more than just finding the correct answer. It is really about the process of thinking, reasoning, and applying knowledge. It develops critical and logical thinking because students learn how to justify and defend their ideas. It also connects mathematics to real life, since many real-world problems require problem-solving skills. Another important point is that it encourages creativity and perseverance, because sometimes there are multiple ways to solve a problem. It also enhances communication skills as students explain their reasoning both in writing and speaking. Lastly, it strengthened decision-making because choosing the best strategy to solve a problem is just like making choices in real situations.
Now that we understand why problem solving is important in mathematics, let us move forward to the complexities of problem solving. First is problem identification. Sometimes the hardest part is knowing what the real problem is. We often confuse symptoms with causes. For example, if you're failing math, is the problem that you're not smart, or is it because of poor study habits, distractions at home, or maybe even unclear teaching? Unless you identify the root cause, you can't fix it. So tip, always ask yourself, what's the real reason behind this problem? Next is problem representation. The way we frame a problem affects how we solve it. For example, saying, I want to do better in school is wrong. But saying, I want to increase my math quiz scores by 10% in 3 months is specific and measurable. So tip, write problems in clear, specific terms. The clearer the problem, the clearer the solution. Next is cognitive load. Our brains can only handle so much information at once. Overloading it makes solving harder. For example, when solving a long algebra equation with fractions, exponents, and multiple steps, if you try to keep it all in your head, you'll likely make mistakes. So tip, break big problems into smaller steps. Use scratch paper, don't rely only on memory. Next is strategy selection. Not all problems can be solved with the same method. Choosing the wrong strategy wastes time. For example, trial and error might help with puzzles but isn't efficient for solving a system of equations. Third, using substitution or elimination is better. So tip, know different strategies and when to use them. Next, emotional and psychological barriers. Our emotions affect our thinking. Stress, fear of failure, or a fixed mindset can block logic. For example, during exams, even if you studied hard, you might blank out because of panic. So tip, manage stress with breathing, confidence, and preparation. Believe that mistakes are part of learning. Next is multiple solutions and ambiguity. Some problems don't have a single correct answer. You may need to weigh options and make trade-offs. For example, a school with a small budget must decide, buy new books or repair classrooms. Both are valid, but you can't have both at once. So tip, learn to compare pros and cons before deciding. Next is transfer of knowledge. It's hard to apply what you learned in one situation to anyone. For example, you can solve classroom work problems about money, but when asked to budget your allowance, you may struggle to apply the same math. So tip, practice applying your learning in real-life context. And lastly, dynamic and evolving nature. So some problems change as you try to solve them. For example, classroom discipline. When you solve one issue, a new behavior might appear depending on how students respond. So tip, be flexible. Be ready to adjust your approach as the situation changes. Now, let's move forward to the kinds of problem solving. First is routine problem. These are problems that require the direct application of learned formulas, rules, or procedures. They are straightforward, familiar, and help reinforce mastery of basic skills. So it is classified as low because the solution path is straightforward, requiring only direct recall and application of familiar formulas, rules, or procedures. For example, solve 3x plus 5 equals to 20. So why it is routine? First is the solution path is already known. Isolate x. Next is we apply basic algebra rules, subtract and divide step by step. Next is no creativity or multiple strategies are needed. Just recall and apply the rule. So it's routine because it is direct, predictable, and uses procedures students have already mastered. Next is non-routine problem. So these are problems that have no immediate or obvious solution path. They require critical thinking, creativity, and the use of multiple strategies to arrive at a solution. So it is classified as high complexity because they do not have a clear or immediate solution path, requiring exploration, the use of multiple strategies, and higher order thinking skills such as creativity, critical reasoning, and generalization. For example, in how many ways can 5 boys and 5 girls sit alternately in a row? So why is it non-routine? First, there's no immediate formula to apply. You must think critically. Next, you must consider conditions. Boys and girls must alternate. And lastly, it requires combinatorial reasoning, factorials, arrangements, and careful planning, not just recall of one formula. So, it is non-routine because it demands exploration, multiple steps, and higher order thinking, not just a straight rule.
We'll be looking at 3 main approaches that people use to tackle problems. The first method is the analytic method. This is what most of us think when we talk about problem solving. It involves breaking a problem down into smaller, manageable parts. You use logic and establish formulas to solve each part, and then you combine the solutions to solve the overall problem. It's a very systematic and logical approach. Think of it like a scientist or an engineer solving a complex equation. Next, we have the synthetic method. This is a bit different. Instead of breaking things down, you build up a solution from existing known results or principles. You start with what you already know works and then assemble those pieces to construct a new solution. This is often used in fields like design or architecture where you use existing components to create something new. Finally, there's the heuristic method. This is a more flexible approach, often described as trial and error. It relies heavily on intuition, experience, and educated guesses. You might not have a clear formula to follow, so you try out different solutions and see what works. Think of a mechanic troubleshooting an engine or a programmer trying to debug a piece of code. They're using their experience to guide their attempts. So to quickly summarize, analytic is about breaking down problems. Synthetic is about building up a solution. And lastly, heuristic is about using trial and error.
Now, let's talk about the different type of solving strategies. So first is the working backwards. When we talk about working backwards, this means that instead solving a problem from the very beginning, we start from the final result and then reverse the steps to find its starting point. For example, if you know the answer after multiplying number by 3 and then adding 5, you got 20. You can work backwards by undoing the steps, subtract number 5, then divide by 3, and you will get the original number 20. So when do we use it? This strategy is very useful in the problems that involve sequential operations, steps, puzzle, situation, or where reversing the steps is possible. So what should we be careful of? This method may fail if there are hidden conditions in the problem or the operation cannot be reversed easily. For example, if there's a square root or absolute value, sometimes it is not simple to just reverse it. Next is pattern finding. This strategy means observing and identifying regular pattern or repeated structure in a problem. Once we see the pattern, we can generalize it to predict the next result or solve the problem. For example, if the number goes 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on, you can notice that the pattern is add 2 each time, so you can already predict the next number without computing everything one by one. So when do we use it? It is useful in problems involving sequence, series, number of patterns, or geometric arrangement. So the pitfall to avoid is sometimes people make wrong generalization, like assuming a pattern continues forever without proof. If the pattern suddenly changes, your answer might be wrong. So we should always check if the pattern truly applies to the whole problem. The third strategy is simplification. This means breaking down a complex or big problem into smaller and easier parts. By simplifying, we can solve one step at a time instead of being overwhelmed by the whole problem. For example, if you are asked to find the area of a complex figure, you can divide it into simple shapes like rectangles and triangles, then solve each part and add them together. So, when do we use it? It is very effective in word problems, geometry, or algebra, especially when large problems can be reduced to smaller and simpler cases. So, pitfalls to avoid or we should avoid, sometimes oversimplifying can lead to ignoring important details or even changing the original problem. So while simplification is helpful, we need to make sure we are not removing essential information. Lastly is drawing a diagram. So when we say drawing a diagram, it means we represent the problem by making a sketch, a graph, or even a chart. Instead of just reading the words, we use visual representation to see the relationship and structure more clearly. So why is this important? Sometimes when we just look at numbers or read long problem statements, it can be confusing. But when we draw, it helps us to picture the problem in our mind. For example, if we are asked about the distance between two places, we can just draw a line segment to represent it. If we are asked to solve geometry problems like perimeter or area of a polygons, it is easier if we sketch the shape first before solving. So when do we use this strategy? It is very useful in geometry problems like drawing a triangle or polygon to identify the sides and angles. In distance problem like making a map or a line to show how far the 2 points are. In a set problems like using Venn diagram to show the relationship of groups or any situation where visual pictures make problem easier to understand. But we also need to remember the pitfalls of this. We must be careful of. If our diagram is inaccurate or misleading, it can actually confuse us. For example, if we drew a triangle that looks like a right triangle, even if it is not, we might assume wrong things. Another problem is that the diagram is oversimplified. Sometimes we remove important details without noticing it. So the key to make the diagram clear, correct, and complete. Now, let's move on to example 1, which is about solving a routine problem. The problem is solve 3x plus 5 is equal to 20 using working backwards. Before we solve, let's first understand what the equation means. The equation says that if we take number, multiply it by 3, then add 5, the result will be 20. Our goal is to find the original number is. So how do we solve this? We will use the strategy called working backwards. This means we start from the result, which is 20, and then undo the operation step by step in reverse order. So step 1, start from 20, because this is the final result of the given problem. Step 2, in the equation, 5 was added at the last step, so we do the opposite, which is subtraction. So we subtract 5 from 20, that gave us 20 minus 5 is equals to 15. Step 3, before the addition, there was a multiplication by 3. So now we undo by doing the opposite, which is division. We divide 15 by 3. That gives us 15 divided by 3 is equals to 5. So the solution is x is equals to 5. Now, why is this called routine problem? It is called routine problem because it follows a set of clear step-by-step operations that we are already familiar with. It doesn't require unusual strategies or creative problem solving, just applying the right rules in the right order. Routine problems usually have only one clear answer, and the steps are straightforward.
Now, let's move on to a non-routine problem in mathematics. Non-routine problems are those that do not have an immediate solution and require creativity and reasoning. Our example is in how many ways can the letters of the word level be arranged? This is not a simple routine problem because the word contains repeating letters, 2 L's and 2 E's. That makes it different from a straightforward permutation. To solve this, we can use pattern finding. Step 1. Count the total number of letters. Level has 5 letters. Step 2. Normally, with 5 unique letters, the number of arrangements would be 5 factorial is equals to 120. Step 3. But since some letters repeat, we divide by the factorials of their repetitions. 2L's divide by 2 factorial. 2E's divide by 2 factorial. So, the total number of unique arrangements with the use of the equation is 5 factorial over 2 factorial times 2 factorial is equals to 120 over 4 is equals to 30. Therefore, the word level can be arranged in 30 different ways. Now, let's compare working backwards and pattern finding as problem-solving strategies. First, working backwards is linear and procedural, while pattern finding requires creative generalization. Second, working backwards is best for routine, structured problems. Pattern finding handles abstract, non-routine text. Third, working backwards guarantees a single solution. Pattern finding may produce conjectures needing proof. Fourth, working backwards strengthens procedural fluency. Pattern finding develops deeper reasoning and creativity. So, working backwards is strong for structured problems, while pattern finding is powerful for abstract and non-routine text.
Now, to summarize, here is a checklist for selecting the appropriate strategy in problem solving. First, ask, is the problem routine or non-routine? If it can be solved with a direct formula or reverse operation, then use an analytic method or work backwards. If it involves visual or spatial relationships, then diagrams are very useful. If there is repetitive structure or sequence, then pattern finding can help. And finally, if the problem is complex and overwhelming, simplification is the best approach. This checklist reminds us that the right strategy depends on the nature of the problem.
To wrap things up, it's clear that problem solving isn't just about finding the right answer. It's a complex process with many potential barriers. As future educators, we need to recognize that the complexity of a problem isn't just the math itself, but in how we approach it. We've explored key challenges like identifying the real problem rather just a symptom, and the importance of framing problems clearly. We also saw how our cognitive load, strategy selection, and even our emotions can impact our ability to find the solution. By understanding these complexities, we can better guide our students. We can teach them to break down big problems and to be flexible and creative when facing a non-routine problem, one that doesn't have an obvious solution. The goal is to move beyond just solving routine problems that rely on a single formula. We need to prepare students for the ambiguity of real life, where there might be multiple solutions and the problem itself can change. Ultimately, Ultimately, our role is to empower students to not only master mathematical procedures, but also to become adaptable and resilient problem solvers. As future educators, let's remember, every problem is a chance to learn, and every solution is a step toward growth. Remember, a great teacher doesn't just give answers, they teach the art of finding them. Thank you.